thanks for being with us today and for sharing some information. And we are recording this and we'll put it on the Facebook page. So Jim, if you'd like to review yourself later or if others want to share it, you can.
That's good stuff. Well, thank you, Lynn. And it's a privilege to be with you guys today. And nice to see familiar faces and some that I'm not as familiar with. It's just really good to be here. I'm gonna talk a little bit about something that I don't know anything about, which is what people like me do. We pretend that we know things based on our ability to communicate, not on our actual areas of expertise. But the invitation I had to talk about the topic of what do we do with employees during this crisis, during this quarantine, really gave me an opportunity to think about a whole bunch of things. And I've enjoyed the exercise because it's made me think about my own experience and to think also more broadly about the experience of people that I know and that I care about. I want to acknowledge that here in Dubuque, Iowa, where I live, I have a partner that I work with whose name is Ermina Solar. And a number of you have met Ermina. She was going to join me today or hoped to be able to, but she actually had something else going on, which is weird. None of us have anything going on, but there it is. And so she's not here. But some of the sharing that I want to do today comes based on conversations I had with her leading up to this when we were talking about doing this. So this isn't all mine. And I've got a couple resources later that I can point you to that, you know, I don't feel like I'm an expert in this. My own background is I'm a school psychologist. I worked as a school psychologist for a school district, an intermediate school district for 30 plus years. And then they gave me early retirement, and who doesn't like that? But I by no means was ready to stop working. And so I'm now an independent contract worker with a school district that I had served for a number of years. My work with Bridges and with Framework started in the mid-2000s when I was just getting acquainted with Framework through my own job. And then for about 10 years, I've been working with Bridges and Framework and different things with AHA. And I love the stuff. I love the material. It's literally changed the way that I deal with people on a day-to-day basis. It's given me a lens to engage with people and not to try and explain why it is that they're not making sense to me. It's been so helpful. So I'll tell you a little bit what's going on at my school, because my school is an organization that's dealing with employees. And I think what my school is doing is what I think a lot of schools are doing. They're kind of, schools are doing this, and maybe organizations are doing this as well. I'm not positive because I'm not in so much the business world, but they're kind of they're in a holding pattern. And there's this idea that when we go back to normal, then everything will go back to the way it was before. And I think there's enough conversation about this, and you guys have probably encountered it in whatever field you're in, there is no back to normal here. Like, we're never going back to the way that it was. There are going to be some things that are dramatically going to change. And so as I began to think about that in this immediate time, I think that this is more about, I think the approach needs to be less about just how do we support our employees so that when they come back to work or come back to the office or we can rehire them or whatever it is, that everything will be just like it was before. But how do we help employees as organizations manage this time in preparation for whatever may come next? So that's kind of the broader way I was thinking about it. In my own school right now, this will stun you. We get emails and we do Zoom calls. We get emails and we do Zoom calls. I know, no way. Like, what? That's happening? I didn't know that. And I think those are acceptable systemic responses to keep everybody informed in the midst of a crisis we think will be over, and maybe to clarify some certain expectations of what we ought to do to keep up on our work or to keep up on our jobs or to keep connected. But I know that in my own position, the focus has been on those people who are working from home. And as far as I know, nothing in my own organization is being done to address the social emotional challenges and needs that both the people who are continuing to work, like the teachers, are continuing to have to work from home, but also the furloughed employees, like the paraprofessionals, the bus drivers, the cafeteria people. Those people are still being paid by the school, and we're grateful for that their financial needs are continuing to be met for the rest of the school year anyway. But I'm not sure that anything's being done to address some of the broader issues that they might be experiencing. So that got me to thinking about what would it look like if we did start to do that. And to me, it starts with this. As an organization, as you think about your employees, what assumptions are you making about what they're doing right now? And how is your communication reflecting the assumptions you're making based on your organization? So this is what I think that we run into. And again, this comes out of some conversations I've had with Ermina and a couple other people as well. I think that if you're a middle-class organization or an organization that expects or assumes that people are functioning in stability, as we like to call it in the workplace stability work, then you assume that people are at home taking advantage of the extra time they have to do some things. So like I built a wall in the front yard. Like we got some rocks. Now, when I say I built a wall, you need to understand that there's a person that thinks about the wall and then there's a person that carries the big rocks. Okay. I got to carry the big rocks. My wife built a wall through my big rocks. All right. We built a wall. We had time and resources to do home improvement. I have my dad's old accordion in the basement. So I picked up the accordion. I was going to bring it out today, but I just thought, no, that's a bad idea because I haven't learned to play the accordion yet, but I have it. And now I've got this extra time. And I think that sometimes as organizations, we paint everybody with the same brush of what we think they're doing with this extra time. So people who are in stability, I think, are actually seeing this as a bonus in some ways in terms of the extra time.
Agreed.
So, in Bridges, we look at the 8 resources, right? And so we're looking at these 8 resources plus the 3 added through Getting Ahead. And although time is not one of those resources, we understand there's hidden rules for time that affects it. And so in stability, if you get this extra time, which we value so much, right? Everything about in our middle class stability world is about managing our time. We have everything plotted out. I don't know about you guys, but I just started using my calendar again this week because I was like, I got nothing to do. And my phone will remind me of all the Zoom calls I have to do. So I realized, wow,
All right. I think Jim has frozen on us. He'll be back.
He was on a roll too.
I know. Jim, come back to us.
So what do you think? What is he saying that resounds? Hi, LeVar.
I did a thumbs up, but I think Esmeralda did as well if I saw that. And the fact that I think he's correct. I'm watching some of my own family members that were teachers and they haven't been back in the classroom now for 2 months. And, the home improvement that they've done in some of their new homes has been amazing.
So then let's expand this to the Bridges Getting Ahead movement then, is to what are the other things that we've kind of all put on the back burner and go, I will get to that project at some point in time, whether it's building a wall out front or something else, and are going, what do I want to do professionally or with this movement that is now the time I can do this because I have seen everything on Amazon Prime and Netflix and there's nothing more to watch.
I'm sorry. I need to mute. That's
No, I agree though, Katie. It's true.
So Jim just texted me that he said literally we've lost our internet.
Oh.
So there you go with technology.
Well, we might have to have him come back, but he opened a great conversation, again, I've been seeing on Facebook that we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what Jim was saying. If you're stable and you're still getting paid, you have all this free time. But as far as Jean's conversation, I work for a person who never stops reading. And so one of the things I've tried to do is to read a few of the books that Ruby's saying, hey, these are great. I can't say I'm getting through them as quickly as she is, though.
Hi, Jim.
How nice to see you all. Welcome. It's very nice to you. Thank you for coming today. I really appreciate it. So I have a few notes, and holy cow, through this entire process, I've never had my internet just chop off. And I went and I was still connected to the network, but the internet was gone. I don't know what happened. But anyway, I'm back. Did you guys finish for me? Because I can just quit.
No, keep going. You were on a roll.
I was on bad internet. That's what I was. All right. I don't remember where I was. I was talking about resources, right? So that instability, I'm just going to pretend like I was just talking. Having extra time, because the other resource areas are covered, we are able to manage the other resources. We don't get the full depletion in resources that a financial hit can cause in instability. And we take time and we say, what can I do with this time to be productive? And so we look at opportunities like to build a wall, which is awesome. And I've loved doing it. But what happens if the financial hit that you take, or just being home, gives you more time when your life consistently coming from instability exists in moments, not in time? And now you have prolonged moments where nothing is happening. Now, my mental model for this, if you'll forgive me, is junior high girls. And I know that's kind of a weird reference, but I'm coming from that world, okay? And there are junior high girls that are so trapped in momentary emotional thinking that if there isn't some drama going on, they'll create some drama, because actually neurologically they're not comfortable if there isn't something going on. And so what happens if your life in a survival mindset that comes from instability, this isn't a moral thing, it's not an ethical thing, it has nothing to do with choice. What if your life has taught you to be hyper vigilant at every moment and solving problems on a momentary, moment by moment basis? And now all of a sudden you have all this time, but you don't have the resources to fill that time with some kind of productive activity. And I think what happens is, and one of the things we need to be aware of with the employees that we know that are coming from instability, and let's be very clear, instability isn't just financial. We understand that there's a lot of families out there, a lot of individuals who are functioning in momentary thinking that maybe their financials are covered, but because of the life that we live in, the world we live in now, they're still unstable in emotional ways, relational ways. So just to be clear, this isn't necessarily about poverty, but poverty can contribute to it. What happens if then you've got this space, but you don't know how to fill it? Well, it leaves you open with too much time to think. And what I'm discovering with families and with people I know is that the people that are most prone to some mental health challenges are the people who don't know how to handle extra time as a resource or don't have the resources to fill it. And so what happens if you're not able to manage some of the other things and you've got all this time? Well, I think the stress of all of it that happens over an extended time means your emotional stuff goes up. If your emotional stuff goes up, well, what are we going to happen? Two things are going to happen. You're either going to dive into depression, which is your emotions going up but internalizing, or you're going to begin to express more things emotionally outwards, which is why we're going to have an increased number of calls for domestic violence. And I think that those are some things we're seeing in the culture right now. I think there's information that kind of backs up this thing. So if we're going to talk about supporting employees, the first thing is we have to question our assumptions about what we think is actually happening in the homes of our employees. And we need to realize that our assumptions based on our experiences or organizational expectations and our our mental model for change, if you will, or for, in this case, support, if we give you enough information, you will be able to handle it and know what to do with it. That might not work for some of our employees. And are we addressing employees more? Now, again, if you've got 10,000 people laid off in an organization, you're going to have a more complex problem. But if we're working with organizations that are trying to support 50, 70 employees, there are some things that can be done that can individualize the support. And because we're, in my organization at school, there's time to do it because we're not running an 8-hour day anymore. And there are people who are being paid, but they could actually be transferred their duties. Like we could learn to do new skills in this time where we're being paid, but we're not doing anything. There may be some people that would really be oriented toward developing support systems that are more individualized. Now, I don't know what that means, okay? I don't know what that means in a business you're thinking of or an organization that you're thinking of. I just know that a one-size-fits-all isn't going to work because that one size is only going to fit the size for whom it's made. And that size is going to be based on our assumptions about what people are doing while they're not at the office, while they're not working at all, while they're furloughed, or while they're being paid, but they have nothing to do. So that's my first thing is like, how do we address the assumptions of what's going on at home? And do we have a method of doing that? So here's a couple things that come to mind for me. And I'm tossing these out, not because I'm an expert at all, but these are some things that if I was in a position in an organization, I would want to be going after this. So the first thing I'd want to ask is, are we assessing communication for effectiveness? So if we're sending emails and doing Zoom calls, that's going to work for people who are good with emails and Zoom calls. But I think probably people who are under stress are less likely to read or process emails. Like, we're not sending letters anymore. I get that. Nobody reads the mail. But I think people under stress, they may have time, but they're not necessarily reading or processing the information in the email. And so I think we need to have a way to assess, are we getting communication in a way that we actually know we're connecting with our employees that are out there? You can't just throw on this tagline. And I'll share a little story from my wife in a minute, but hey, we're just checking in on you. Wanted to know that you know if everyone's doing okay. We really miss you guys. And by the way, here's what we need you to do. Like if that's your emotional support for your employees, that actually can be kind of offensive. Like you don't care. You don't care what's going on with me. You just care that I get this information and that I meet your expectations. And it's not that that's even how it's intended, but we have to recognize how things are being received as well as what we intend. And I think that there's a part of this that has to separate we're concerned about you from here's what you need to do. And I think organizations, and again, how long is this going to last? Like, I don't think we're ever going back to the way that it was in many situations. And I think that we have an opportunity to develop a mindset for support. What we know is happening in our culture today is that the social, emotional, mental health needs at every level from childhood to old age are more and greater than they've ever been before. And so we have an opportunity as organizations to begin to assess not only are we getting the most out of our employees' productivity, but are we addressing these social, emotional, mental health, instability, stability needs? And do we have an infrastructure within our organization so that if something like this happened, we know what to do? Can we grow through this? Individually, of course, I've been doing some videos for my schools and talking with people and, kind of working with the teachers. And my whole thing is we grow under stress. Nobody gets better unless you're stressed, right? Like, so you can reference it. It's just like a big, gigantic weight room that we're all in right now. And some people are going to lift those weights and they're going to say, you know what, I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to get a little bit better. And other people are going to say, them weights are too heavy. I'm just going to sit down and not do anything with it. But what we do with this stress will determine how we come out on the other side into not the back to normal, but the forward to normal. Because the new normal is going to be different. And I think we can confront we have an opportunity to confront some of the inadequacies in addressing these social emotional needs. So communication matters. My wife got a call from she actually got a phone call from a supervisor at one of the places. She works at a museum in town as a part-time employee. And it was, I heard the message first, but it was like, so I'm just calling, just kind of want to check in on you and see how you're doing. By the way, we need your bio for a grant that we're submitting this afternoon, and we need to have it by 5:00. And it was just like, first time I've heard from you, and you care about me, but I don't think you care. I think you just want my bio. My wife chose not to listen to the message. She's got some issues. But anyway, she was like, I'm not answering that. They don't care about, anyway. All right, sorry. I don't want to lay my wife out there. She's a very nice lady, but quite firm. All right, so if we're doing some things, and this is kind of a school situation that I'm experiencing, if we're offering employees something, are we using a one-size-fits-all idea? Are we saying, hey, if you're having some stress, here's a website you can go to, or here's a list of things you can do with your stress, or like, there's nothing wrong with those things, but that's not necessarily addressing individual needs. This is a question that I think is something that I would definitely build in that I don't see in my own organization. How easy is it for the employees that are out there to ask for help? Do we have a method by which the employees are able to contact us and ask for help? And when they do we have a system that allows that help to not to be like, oh, you're dealing with that, but actually, oh yeah, we have here's our system. Here are some people that you can talk to. So to do that would require that we organize that kind of a structure. And so again, do you have some furloughed employees? Do you have some people that are working or getting paid, but they're not doing anything? Do you have some that are oriented towards social work? Like, you're not even a social work organization. You might be a business, but you're not doing business right now. Do you have some people that could develop some kinds of resources so that if people call and ask for help, I need some help with my kids, I need some help with my mental health, I need some help with my bills. Is there a way for people to ask for help and not feel like that's causing them conflict within their employment situation? You could, like, once you build some kind of a network for coming in, you can also then build a network for going out so that you can individualize people getting contacted on a regular basis. I mean, these are things that probably people are already talking about, but I still think it's worth talking about. So is every individual employee getting individual voice-to-voice contact at least, and preferably face-to-face? And is there a way to do that it's not, I'm calling to talk about work, but I'm actually calling to talk about you? And do the employees have an opportunity to call? Can they call somebody? Is there a network at the organization? I can call, there's someone that they'll refer me to that can talk to me and connect me with resources. Does the organization have the ability to generate resources, local community resources that are addressing specific needs during the quarantine, so that if I call and ask for help, my organization, they connected me with people in town I didn't even know that were happening. It's going to take some information gathering. It's going to take some research on the part of the organization. If you have people that aren't doing anything, like, this sounds so crass. If you have people that aren't doing anything and they're getting paid, give them a job. Most people who are getting paid would like to at least have something to do, like they feel like they're contributing. And this would be something that could be done, doing that kind of research. I'm just checking the chat because I just realized that I didn't have the chat up. So, like, if you guys are swearing at me, I don't know that yet. So let me just check that out. All right. I don't have time to read all that. Gene, it's too long. I don't have time to read it. Gene, you're supposed to use emojis. You don't understand the time we live on. You get 3 pictures and it has to express a complete thesis statement. All right. Anyway. The other thing that I think that maybe organizations need to look at is the mental health support. We have employee assistance programs. Do employees know how to access them? Because they're oftentimes kind of, you can always call this, but it's just kind of like an add-on. You get a little flyer, and they're really, like, are employees being given good instructions, and do they have access to it? And are we giving them resources? So, like, online counseling is a thing now. And it was a thing before this happened, but there are organizations that are now built around providing online therapeutic counseling. One is called betterhelp.com. That's just one that I've heard of, and I kind of looked around their website a little bit. Not because I needed help. Don't go, like, I'm fine, everything's good with me. No, I actually think everybody would benefit from some therapy. I don't think it hurts anybody to talk to somebody that can help you sort out your feelings. But there are good online mental health support services. Is there a way to help employees with that? And again, during this time where we're not looking, okay, eventually we won't need these things, but can we begin to explore these? So our organization now is better equipped to meet the mental health needs of our employees in the future. Online kinds of services like that might be worth looking into. And the other thing I think organizations have to be aware of, even if they have nothing to do with families, is that if you're working at home or if you're furloughed at home and you got kids, that's a challenge. If you've never done it before, that's a challenge. So is your organization connecting people with resources to support them with their children? And a couple of things I wanted to throw out are these resources. I'm going to try and share my screen. Are you ready?
Okay.
This is high tech, man. And I'm an old guy, so I like high tech is an overhead projector to me. Do we have overhead projectors? Anybody got an overhead projector? All right. I'm going to share my screen here. Hold on just a sec. So I went, I tried to like do a little bit of research so I'd actually sound like I actually knew what I was talking about. One of the business sites that I ran into that I like was called inhersite.com, and they have a blog that has a bunch of articles. What I like about it is, and I hope that this is okay to say, I think that a woman's approach to employee support is a little bit different in general from a male perspective, which is how do I kind of manage things and make sure that everybody's connected and make sure we're still, it's not that it's not well intended. It's just, I think that when women talk about this, they're a little bit more sensitive to some of the emotional needs. And if I'm painting with too broad a brush, please, this is just about people being wired differently. I'm not trying to be offensive, but I like the articles I found there because I found that they were asking questions that were a little bit more sensitive to what's going on. So here was one, how to support employees working from home with children. There's a longer article, and when I'm done, I'll go ahead and cut and paste this into the chat. But these are the things that they said ought to be going on if your employees have children. They need to have flexible work hours. But I love this one. Don't expect employees to pretend that their children aren't there. Like if you're on a Zoom call and your kids pop in, one of the things they said is, if you're in charge of that meeting, acknowledge the kids. Say hi to them. Acknowledge their presence. Don't expect parents not to have their kids there because it's not realistic. Make it easy for employees to be off the clock. Honor and maybe even supplement PTO. Like just because you're at home and now it's real fluid on what we're doing. If you have PTO, you have PTO. You're still time off if that's a part of your package. And then offer support directly as opposed to, we're here for you, just give us a call, but directly connect with employees and ask them those kinds of questions. What can we do to help you feel a little bit more connected? Here was another article for employees working at home, but I also think these work for furloughed employees. These are 6 questions that you ought to ask every employee. Do you have what you need to work from home? Don't you hate it when people just read the PowerPoint? There they are. They're right in front of there. But some of these are not typical organizational business questions. For example, how do you plan to take time for yourself? Like this is not a business interview here. This is a social, emotional, mental health interview. And I think these kinds of things need to be done separated from, oh, and by the way, here's the expectations for work. There was one in here. Well, I don't remember. I had some really good thoughts about this when I was looking at them, but now I don't remember. But I do think the one, how do you plan to take time for yourself, is an acknowledgement that this is a stressful time for everybody. And without saying, hey, you're under stress and we know it, it's like, how are you taking care of yourself is just an acknowledgement that everybody needs to have a plan for that. Now, again, the backward working, what I'm trying to say is, if you ask that question, then are you building a network of resources so that if they say, well, this is what I wish I had. Do you know any ways for me to get connected with that? If you've got somebody building, hey, locally, if you call this organization, they're working with people like remotely on developing meditation and mindfulness things. And maybe nobody knew about that. If you've got somebody doing some research, now you can refer people who you connect with to specific resources. It's not like, what do you need? You know, how can we support you? Or what are you doing to take care of yourself? And then you go, oh, wow. Yeah, no, that sounds really, boy, I wish I could help you out with that. That might be not what we're hoping for. We want to try and build opportunities to connect people with resources. And again, it's going to take a little bit of work. But if there's somebody that's willing to put that work in, that's already doing work, or their responsibilities have been reduced a little bit, it would take some research, but it wouldn't take a whole lot to find out who's doing what, make a few phone calls to get more information so that you've got real easy connections. So I guess the thing I just want to close with is what I started with, which is I don't think we're ever going back to normal. And I think that organizations that are in a holding pattern, that are just hoping that when this is over and everybody comes back to work, it will be just like it used to be. I'm not sure that that's the best approach. In a sense, this is a gigantic cultural trauma. And if I think about traumas we've experienced as a culture, one that comes to mind that's really obvious for all of us is 9/11. 9/11 was a trauma for our entire culture and to some extent for the whole world, but for right now, just for us. 9/11 was incredibly, it had an impact on everybody. And I don't know if you guys remember going out the next day and there wasn't a single plane in the sky. And there was this emotional drain on people. And they went to work, but we were kind of zombies for a little bit because we just couldn't cope with what happened. But the difference between 9/11 and this trauma is that 9/11 was a moment. And even though we experienced trauma, we could point to a moment that was in our rearview mirror. COVID-19 has been a prolonged chronic trauma that is not the same. It doesn't have the same impact because it numbs us in our trauma. We now are in this numbed state where we don't know what's going to happen, but everything has changed. And here's what I think is going to happen. Some of you, I count myself, I think probably everybody in here may remember air travel before 9/11. Like when I was very young, my family lived in Brazil. My dad was working in Brazil. And so I spent 4 years in Brazil in my teenage years. And man, you went to the airport, and literally, there was one time when my grandparents walked on the plane with us, saw us to our seats, got off the plane. Like they just went out the back door of the plane. And now when we go to the airport, it's nothing like that. But we don't actually go, oh, gee, I wish I could just, we just accept this as kind of what is the new normal. So when 9/11 happened, it was a cultural trauma. We didn't go back to normal. We went forward to normal. And we made changes that would help us not to experience that trauma again. I think that's what we need to do as organizations, is not be looking back to, oh, when we get back into school, then the kids will come to class and everything will be fine. But actually, we need to be looking forward to normal, because another thing that's true is when people do come back to work and when you rehire people, they've experienced a prolonged time of trauma. They're not just going to come back to work and everything's fine. Like they're still processing their emotion. They're still processing what this meant for their family. They're still processing even the grief that they actually have to come back to work. That's a different flip side on it. There's a lot that's going to be going on. And you don't process trauma just by getting back to work on Monday morning because the quarantine's lifted. It's going to take some time. So organizations, again, as a summary, what are our assumptions about what they're doing? What are we building as a support network that is separate in communication from here's what you need to do while you're on furlough or while you're working from home? How are we building support networks for social, emotional, mental health? And then what are we putting into place that will actually be a part of what we have as we move forward? All right.
Thanks.
Is that good? Was it good, but I mean, is that good enough?
You know,
Great.
I don't know if you've seen the chat. I don't know if anyone else wants to open their mic and make comments and even talk a little bit. We have a few more minutes just about what's happening in your work environment as well.
May I jump in?
Sure.
It's Laurie and Nevada. Wow, Jim, I'm absolutely moved to tears by everything you have said. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In our initiative, and I gave you our website last time and I put it in again, we've been really focused on the financial impact. You know, our organization is reaching out to help Nevadans with the financial impacts of this time. And what we're seeing is exactly what you have said, that it is so much more than that. And there is some stigma for people to reach out and ask for financial support when they're sitting home completely numb, having really no idea where to reach out, how to even articulate what it is they need. They may not have the technology, etc. So we've already been talking about how can we build in support systems or resources around emotional mental health. And what's come up is what we've called self-care, which is, I think, a really middle-class way of speaking to that. But what you have said, and those of you that know me know that's kind of my toolkit, is, you know, conscious dance and health rhythms drumming, and, you know, what are people doing at home and how can we offer that for individuals, families to engage in self-care in a way that is going to help them through this. And as I put in there, we're calling it, we used to say getting to the other side, and we're saying it's like beyond, it's the new now, it's what is happening. And those of us who are stable, yeah, where, you know, I'm playing my ukulele and, you know, where I live in a community where we're doing cool things. And I think people are just suffering, and how can we really help them through this? So thank you for everything. This is just wonderful. And I really appreciate what you're offering to us.
Thank you, Laurie.
Other comments? I see, Jim, you've put a link in the chat.
Those are the two articles that I showed if you want to look into that a little bit more.
Thank you.
I have another one that I kind of took some information from the Harvard Business Review, and I'll put that in there too. I didn't necessarily show anything from it, but it was some stuff that I just thought was kind of interesting. And they moved from the, I shouldn't try and cut and paste. You know, guys really can't multitask at all. Like, I'm just telling you, we just can't do it. Like, and I know humanly nobody can multitask, but somehow you ladies can just boom, 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 back and forth really fast. And I just can't do it. Anyway, this one moved from, it's called How to Manage Your Newly Remote Workers. And it moved from, here's how you can communicate information. It had some good ideas about like defining how we're going to communicate so that you know exactly what vehicle you're supposed to use for what, like when do you use email, when do you use Zoom, that kind of stuff. But then it did move into support and emotional stuff too. So that's another article you might want to reference.
Thank you.
What are you guys seeing that, you know, what isn't working as you communicate with your employees and with your furloughed getting ahead graduates, and what is the Bridges community and your community really doing to get to the support and the heart? What questions are your getting ahead graduates, where are their biggest needs? What are they saying?
I'll go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I am continuously surprised at how resourceful our graduates are and how proud they are of themselves for being able to endure this and use their resources because we've taught them how to do so. And we have a closed Facebook group that we talk to our graduates through all the time, and we're always asking questions like, what's the positive thing that has come out of this so far? So we're asking them thoughtful questions to get them thinking differently. But a lot of them are just saying, I'm so glad that I took the Money Matters class because I had $1,000 in my savings account, and that peace of mind has meant everything to me. And I'm just proud of them. Some of them are struggling, but they're not caving in, because the strength that they have because of the generational poverty that they've had to endure anyway, but they're using the skills that we've taught them to survive this differently than maybe someone of maybe a middle class person who's experiencing lack for the first time. And so I'm encouraged that they're actually using the skills that were in the Getting Ahead book, and they're putting a lot of that stuff to use now for the first time sometimes.
Cool.
I'd like to address Ruth's question as well. Hello, I'm Esmeralda. This is my first chat with you all. Thank you all for having me. I'm really enjoying this, and it's really close to heart. I work for Kathy Hartzog there. We're both together. So to answer your question, I think on two levels. One, as an employee, I feel like our organization has done really well to support. And I'll give one very brief example. I'm just having a really hard time working from work with a tiny little screen. And, I was heard. And immediately, Kathy was able to get bigger monitors to hook up to our little laptops to just make that a little easier, which made a world of difference. And in the same light, we feel like that is how we're working with our Getting Ahead participants, just to really remain flexible to what is going on with them. And it is not a cookie cutter. And I feel like there's both sides of what Treasure and both Jim have shared. One, it can be very, very challenging in one aspect, and on the other, our folks that have been dealing with trauma like all of their lives are incredibly resourceful and resilient on their own, because this is where they've lived 24/7. To some of us, this is new, and to them, it's just been the way of life. So I feel like both of those things are important to acknowledge. I really love one of the takeaways, or a few takeaways I took away from this is communication. I feel like does get overlooked with organizations, especially when we're in the minutia, in the everyday. We're wanting to be a service. We want to be receiving as well, and just to be very intentional about communicating as a staff to be supportive with one another, and then also of our participants, to allowing that space during our Zoom meetings with our GA participants to just have that. So that's what I had. Thank you all.
Thanks for sharing.
That's me again.
And I had opened my mic just before Esmeralda did, because I wanted to, well, I'll just second everything she said. And we're a very small number of staff members, and Treasure, just like you, we've reached out to all of our graduates from the past 2 years, and that's how long we've been a part of this community. And we hear over and over again how grateful they are for the tools that they have heard and now are applying into their lives. And it's been very inspirational to me. And we share those, we call them mission moments, with each other on our, when we're talking to each other as a staff. And it's been amazing to hear that over and over and over again. And we've just gotten our, thanks to this community and being part of these calls, we have taken the step, and we've gotten our Getting Ahead workshops back online through Zoom. And then as an organization, we just have 7 employees, but we're also being pushed at this time to rethink our organization and what we're going to look like in this season of not knowing the new. And so I just want to say thank you for this. This weekly meeting is very encouraging to me, to hear from you, to be encouraged by you, and to be reminded of why we're all doing this work and being part of this community. So I also want to say thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being a part.
You mind if I say one more thing that was just laid on my heart while she was talking?
Sure.
We're calling all of our graduates, and some of them, if we find someone that's particularly sad, who's maybe living alone, and but they're okay financially or things like that. We give them a job, just like Jim was saying, give somebody a different mission. We'll say, okay, well, why don't you spend the next week instead of, because a lot of times when we're looking inwardly and things, sorry, here's my cat. We're looking inward and things are all about me, and it just gets heavier and heavier. Take the focus off of me and put it on to helping others. So if you're stuck at home and you're sad and lonely, we give you a job. Call everyone in your class. Remember that class that you had 2 years ago? Call everyone that was in your class and check on them. That's your job this week. And it kind of takes the focus off of me and it gives them something to do. And then they can check in on their friends, and the way that they're supporting each other is phenomenal. When someone has a need and they put it on our Facebook group, another graduate is meeting that need. It's awesome to see, and watching them interact and help each other is rewarding. And it's just like with the staff, my encouragement to them is, let's help everyone. Let's do everything we can to take them focus off of ourselves and what's going on, and seeing how we can go out and make the world a better place.
Thanks, Treasure.
So I had sort of three things come to mind. One was when we started talking about this early on, we began calling people. And I remember Carol Stegman. Do you guys remember her?
Yeah.
From Finley, she's getting a graduate from umpteen years ago. And she said, we should be the ones involved in what's happening in the future, because if there's anyone that knows how to live in the tyranny of the moment, it's us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We know how to deal. So, that's one thing. And I think, Treasure, you were talking about this too, is that we have to have folks engaged all the way. And I think the other thing is, I think you mentioned something about working on weight, Jim, didn't you? So I've been doing that, but in the kitchen, if you know what I mean. And finally, my thoughts are, I really appreciate that we get to meet like this. And I think Ruth and Lynn pulling this off and bring us together every week is really cool. Yeah.
Thanks, you guys. I'm going to close this out for this week. We'll meet again next Thursday. So tell your friends. If you are interested in coming to the virtual online national conference, you're welcome to register. We'd love for you guys to be with us. No fee. It's free.
I would like Phil just to talk about next week.
Okay.
Phil, how you're going to review the surveys that we conducted?
Yeah. I hope we get more survey results, or if we can somehow make an effort to get more in on the community survey and the institutional survey. Pretty good response from the individual getting head point of view. And we basically were surveying to see, what problems people are facing and how big those problems are. And from the individual surveys, it makes me think about what Jim was talking about, mental health. So that was put on as, is this a problem? And if it's, how big is it? A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it ranked either first or second out of like 11 different problems. And that goes, I think, to exactly what Jim was talking about, is that sometimes we forget that aspect of it and how hard that is, under-resourced, crowded in a place, with not all the things that we in the middle class have, right? So I hope we get more in from the institutional level and the community level, and we'll talk about the results and then we can discuss it.
Good. Thanks, Phil.